All right, here we go.
All
Hey,
right.
everyone. Good morning.
Welcome everyone to episode 3 of not Star Wars, but Excel Today. Super excited. Episode 3 already. Oh my. I can't believe it. As always, I have my co-star here, Ben Bomberry.
I'm
But
very happy
today,
today too. Yeah, Sean is one of the greatest people to talk to. He's so easy to talk to. He makes you feel at ease about anything, and so
oh,
super excited to have him on the show today.
I know, Sean, wow, thank you so much. I know you have a busy schedule. Thank you for just being able to come on here. Um, Welcome. I mean,
Yeah,
how
no,
you
thanks for having
doing?
me, guys. I feel exhausted. I think, big picture, very tired, but good. I mean, super excited about a lot of the stuff that's happening out here in tech right now. It's good to see both of you. It's been a while.
Yeah, it has been a long time.
Correct me if I'm
Wow.
wrong, Joe. The last time I saw you was what, the Super Bowl 2 years ago?
Yeah, Super Bowl two. Wow, Super Bowl 2 years ago. We were in person.
Oh
We were
my
in
God.
person.
Good times.
So, we do have this little thing before we even start off the podcast here with our favorite mug. And Sean, I just saw that you had a mug. What kind of mug do you have?
Oh, what a great question. So this is the Ember mug. It is the second most unnecessarily tech thing that I own.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it is. It heats the coffee for me. It's great. It's got a little charger and everything. Big fan.
Man,
Only Sean would have a smart mug. All
I'm
right.
still working on that sponsorship. Ember, if you're listening, call me.
I remember you showed me one where it would heat up and then the image would show up. I remember that.
Yeah, I've still got that actually. I guess that would be my third most unnecessary tech item. Also a coffee mug.
Today I got
the
my,
Kindle display.
Yeah. Today I got my Final Fantasy Tactics ones. Shout out to Cassandra Chow for this one. You can follow her on IG at Chewy Bear. She got one from me way back when we were still in person at Learnit.
Back in the day.
Cassandra's the best. Oh man. Wow, she was best. For those of you that were in person at Learnit, if you've ever attended in person at Learnit, Cassandra made the best cookies for us for the afternoon snack. It was awesome. And then I guess I'll show my mug. I mean, last week I shouted out to my son, so I had to shout out to, well, my wife.
Nice.
Yeah,
well, my wife.
Yeah, my wife. Sorry if you're watching this, baby. I love you.
Well,
All right.
a topic big in the news is Microsoft Ignite. It's one of Microsoft's largest conferences that they do. They do a lot of announcements on new features, programs. A lot of it, though, is kind of more on the developer side and what developers are looking at and everything like that. So we kind of wanted to have a conversation of like more what does Ignite have to tell you, like us as everyday office workers, like how is it going to, what announcements did they make that are going to affect us? And Sean, I know your channel that you're a part of, and also on your Twitter, you've been covering Microsoft Ignite pretty heavily. I watched your videos and everything like that, so I do have some questions ready for you. But also, any of our, anyone watching, if you want to drop some questions here in the comments, we'll get those answered as well. But Sean, just for like a startup, could you like just give us like an idea of how Ignite ran this year, and also kind of what the main themes were this year?
Sure. So, as you mentioned, Microsoft Ignite is Microsoft's biggest conference of the year. I mean, if you follow tech at all, it's, Apple's WWDC. It is where Microsoft goes to set the tone for the year, but it's also where they go to showcase the things that they're working on that kind of emphasize what it is that they're investing in for the long term. So it's focused on developers and administrators, but there's a lot of tea leaf reading where you can get a better sense for, what stuff is coming down the pipeline for just the regular Jane and Joe schmoes like you and I. Sorry, Joe.
Hey.
But yeah, so this year, just like it's unusual the way that they did it this year, but I guess everything that we're seeing here is unusual, but it's not just unusual in the sense that it's happening earlier in the year or that it's happening virtually. It's also unusual in the sense that this is the second one they've hosted in the last 6 months. They actually just had a Microsoft Ignite in September. Really what we're seeing here is Microsoft bringing back all the stuff that wasn't ready for their regularly scheduled Ignite last September. So interesting, but they still managed to make it feel very big, which is impressive. I mean, they've got the TV cameras and the gimbals and the high production value. But at the end of the day, they're using the same tools you and I are using right now. So it's a testament to them how big they've made it feel.
That's great. Yeah, like
wow.
It's nice to know that a $1 trillion company is using the same production values as a small company like us.
Yeah,
there we go. Yeah, it
leveling the playing field.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you do got one question right here that made and it's just should we expect Windows 11? Was there anything on that front or anything like that? That's
a really, really good question. So they actually did. They were very deliberate about not talking about Windows. So for those of you that don't know, Panos Panay, who previously headed up Microsoft's hardware group, now heads up the group that owns Windows. And he was doing a really brief interview, kind of that Google autocomplete style interview, but with Bing, obviously, where they were asking a handful of Windows questions, and he didn't answer much any of them. So there's a theory that Microsoft is going to be hosting a separate event for Windows in the near future. So I think that one, I don't think you're going to hear the words Windows 11 ever. I think if anything, you'd probably see them just start to call it Windows or the new Windows. But there is a lot of stuff coming down the pipeline, Windows wise. So things to look forward to for sure. So keep an eye out. There should be an event within the next, I'm going to say 3 to 4 months.
And let us know in the chat, what do you think it would be called? My guess would be Windows Glass. I mean,
Windows Glass, like Google Glass? We're gonna wear it on our heads?
Yeah. Hey, let's rip it.
You heard it here first. Write it down.
I think you're just gonna go versionless. Like everything's gonna you're just gonna have Excel. You're just gonna have Word. There's not gonna be any number or anything like that associated. I personally just think that 2021 one is probably gonna be that last on-prem iteration that we see, and that from going forward, it'll just be Excel, Word, PowerPoint, and it'll just constantly update and be in that forever beta.
well, if you think about it, the video game world did this years back, where instead of just you got to get a new console, they send the update straight to the console for gaming and different games. I think they should do the same thing with maybe 365. Is everyone's on the same consistency? Everyone has 365. And then they just send all the updates there. So you don't have to worry about getting on-prem every single time. But that's.
Well, I just hope they don't add like microtransaction every time you do a Power Query. You have to do.
Honestly, we've talked about this behind the scenes in the Microsoft world a lot. Like Microsoft has already kind of crossed the Rubicon when it comes to, we'll call it licensing elements of the Microsoft experience. Ignite. I'm sure we'll talk about pieces of it in a minute. Lots of what they announced builds on top of products they already have, like Microsoft Teams or SharePoint. But they have new licensing elements. So, microtransactions in the business world, enterprise microtransactions have already arrived.
Yeah, that's from, if anyone who uses Azure would know that your Azure bill is probably going to be large. We do have another question here. What I think is very relevant to some of the things that were announced at Ignite. Are there any rumors about VBA will be replaced by Python or .NET True? And
that's a great question. Ben, go ahead and finish your question.
Oh, I was just going to say, I noticed that you had talked about Power Automate and how it's very similar to some of the stuff that people do in VBA or with macros. And does that have any play here, or?
So I'll go ahead and preface everything with, I'm definitely not as much of a code junkie as I'd like to be. But that said, the rumors that VBA is going to be sunset inevitably, they're absolutely going to it has to happen. This is all personal opinion. I'll go ahead and preface with that. The reality is VBA was never meant to exist in a cloud-based world. It just doesn't have the scalability. So we've already seen, for example, with the move to the cloud, that macros, if you use Excel on the web, just aren't a thing. Now they have Office web scripts. So this idea of macros isn't going anywhere. This idea of code behind the scenes within the Office universe isn't going away. As to whether it's going to be Python definitively or whether it's going to be something a little bit more homegrown, like the Power FX language that Microsoft just announced for their Power Platform.
Super exciting.
Yeah, remains to be seen.
Yeah.
A great question, S. Morgan. Now, I'm going to put up a question here. I'm not too familiar with this topic, but maybe, Sean, you can shed some light on it. What is installed as we run rand always generate figures? I'm not, again.
I have no idea what that means, and I'm genuinely sorry.
I'm just pulling up the questions here. People ask,
it's a really good question, and for whatever it's worth, I'm going to go figure out the answer to that, and I will tweet it out later. So if you don't follow me on Twitter already at SBGLR, please do.
Thank you all. Awesome question that we can't answer. As far as I saw that you recapped Ignite. You've done quite a lot of videos, and you were also on Twitter covering it as well. As far as like the big takeaway for you from Ignite, what was the big overall message that you think that Microsoft is trying to get across to us as office workers of how we're going to be working?
I think two big things stand out to me. The first and more immediate is that Teams is here to stay. I think that a lot of people it's a polarizing product for those of us that have operated in the information worker space. And Microsoft Teams started out pretty rough. Ben, I know that Ben and Joe, we saw Teams get rolled out pretty haphazardly very quickly, and you eventually figure it out as an organization, but part of that was just the product was so unintuitive, and it's gotten a lot better over the last couple of years. But like my organization, we're a Slack shop. Scandal. But there was a lot of emphasis on getting Teams to feature parity with where Skype was in a couple of basic areas, because Skype, for those of you that don't know, Skype for Business is being retired this year in June, if I'm not mistaken. That's done.
Oh, is that end of support completely then?
Completely. Like they're completely shutting it down. They just dropped support for the old Microsoft Edge browser. So there's a lot of old attic cleaning that Microsoft is doing right now. But Teams is a big one that they're really kind of beating the drum on. Enhancements with respect to the meeting experience. I think we're all tired of this Brady Bunch style of squares after a year. So it's reimagining what the screen experience, what the sharing experience feels like. There was a lot of investment in that, and that's really exciting. But just kind of reimagining what it is to collaborate within the Teams experience, whether it's with the people within your organization or with their newly announced Teams Connect, where you can essentially create a shared channel between organizations that use Microsoft Office 365, as if you were just down the hall from them. It's huge. So Teams is a big one. The other one that's a little bit more, I think, forward-thinking is Microsoft Mesh, which is their VR collaboration, their AR collaboration platform. That took up a lot of the keynote time with Satya. And it was really, it was interesting. I think that the jury is still out on what the real-world business use cases are going to be. But Microsoft has been investing for the last 5 years minimum on what it means to virtually experience collaboration, to virtually experience productivity. So those were kind of the two big ones. And there's a few other small ones, but those are the two big ones that stand out to me.
With the Mesh, do you feel like they're over-promising what it can do?
Yeah.
A little bit beyond like what's currently possible, but from what they were showing with everything there, do you think any of that is possible within the 5 years that you mentioned, or do you think it's going to be like a longer amount of time before we start seeing those features?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I think that there's a general consensus that's starting to form within those of us that keep an eye on the Microsoft space, that Microsoft is blurring the lines between announcing a product that is capable of something on day one and announcing a product that is kind of the beginning of something that will be amazing 5 years from now. Microsoft Mesh is available today if you have a $3,500 HoloLens 2.
Totally. I got one.
If you do you have one?
No.
Okay.
I want one so bad. I saw it and I was like, oh, I could use this. And
right.
different aspects.
And if you watch the keynote, it's, there's like globes floating in the middle of rooms and multi-screen experiences, and none of that's possible today, but it was a part of that introductory keynote video. And I think that it confused people because if you download the Microsoft Mesh app today, you can have a virtual meeting with like Peg people, like Minecraft people looking things. And that's not the same experience that you're promising with these, they call them sizzle videos.
Do you see any application for this for maybe like entertainment or something like that? Like you would, be at a concert or be at a sporting event using their Microsoft Mesh?
I would say probably not Microsoft Mesh, at least in the early days. I know that, companies like Facebook, and I know that companies like Google, and I know companies like Apple, although the latter two haven't announced anything recently. Everybody is looking towards this AR VR space as the next big thing, and certainly not in the same way that we looked at 3D TVs 10 years ago. Where did that go?
I still have one.
There you go. Do you really?
I mean, and that's why they didn't stick, because we would turn over TVs like 10 years. So will AR and VR move into the entertainment space? Absolutely. Is that where Microsoft's looking? Not right now. I think they're really focused on, if you take their introductory videos, their product videos at face value, they're interested in 3D modelings of pipes and, helping the frontline worker or the person on the factory floor. So we're going to see a lot of field value. I don't think that for those of you who are looking for value in the 9-to-5 cubicle, probably not in the immediate, but I think it's coming. I think that Microsoft will get there. But it's definitely going to be a lot more of the boardroom and the out in the field business type use cases.
Yeah. See like a external sales team making great use of that type of technology. Just like
absolutely.
Or even if they could have clients they can meet with doing that as well. I mean, that is like a game changer, so to speak.
Oh yeah.
Companies would love the use case of not having to fly people across the country.
Yeah, I definitely got used to that with COVID as well, right? Like we were all kind of just already doing the Zoom or the team meetings, and a lot less of that interpersonal stuff. Flying there, like you said, in-person handshakes and all that. That all seems to be almost kind of something of the past. Even as we slowly get back to reopening, it's going to be very interesting to see that hybrid workforce in action, and the tools that Microsoft is trying to supply to everybody to make that happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, just something else I saw was something that we all use is email, and obviously Outlook is Microsoft.
Outlook.
Yeah. Was there any changes to Outlook or anything like that that are like kind of big or anything like that? Because I know for us as office workers, like we use Outlook here at Learnit all the time. Like
every day, daily.
How business gets done with us, and so any changes to that is going to be huge to us as well. So is there anything from Ignite that had to do with Outlook?
So there wasn't a ton. There was one big feature that stood out to me. That was the new Outlook calendar board view. That's pretty exciting. So for context, when you think about all the endpoints, all the different pieces of information that go into deciding whether or not you're available or how you spend your time, it's very rarely just what's on my calendar already that helps me make a decision on when I'm going to schedule an event. And that's availability of other people. It's what's on my to-do list. What are my active projects? So, that means that you're opening up 3 and 4 different other applications that all very well may be in the Microsoft universe, but are completely separate from where you happen to be at that moment, which is looking at your calendar. So the new Outlook calendar board view, which is available for web to start. I believe it's already started rolling out. It hasn't hit my tenant yet, but I've seen it and a couple of others. The idea behind it is that you can open up your calendar and think of it kind of like a digital corkboard. You can have your calendar on one side. You can have your Microsoft to-do checklist. You can have goals that you've set for those of you that have experimented with Project Mocha, which is another cool thing they announced about a year ago. Sticky notes. There's a lot of really cool just kind of pieces of information, pinned emails. You can even have other calendars pinned off to the side. So kind of think of it as the side-by-side view in Outlook, but on steroids.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
But something they didn't announce at Ignite, but we know they're working on, is this something called One Outlook, which is Microsoft is investing a ton of effort in, we'll call it webifying the desktop experience. And I know that very possibly people in this audience are very averse to this idea that the desktop applications will inevitably become kind of this hybrid desktop web experience. And Microsoft understands that there's some animosity there. And so what they're doing, this is with both Outlook and with Teams, is they're creating shells that can exist on the desktop, but will take their cues from the web-based versions of these applications. For those of you who use Macs, as an example, you can already enable a view in the desktop version of Outlook that looks dead on like the Outlook Online. So Microsoft is moving in that direction. And I think that while they didn't announce it here, we know they're working on it. The alpha version of the app leaked maybe 3 months ago. It's probably not going to be anything we'll see until next year, but we know they're working on it. So that's going to be a big change.
Yeah, and my thing is, I think the reason why people are really clingy to the desktop apps is because it's always been that the online versions of these applications, they didn't have the power, or maybe not the power, but they didn't have all the features connected with them, right?
Yeah.
There was things you couldn't do in those cloud or online versions that you could do in the desktop. Do you see in the future anything like updating for the cloud so that it kind of starts to level out, right? Because right now there's still that option. Okay, let's open this up in the desktop, do a bunch of stuff in the desktop, and then it automatically will sync with our cloud. But do you think that that's going to go away, or that's going to change? What are your thoughts on that?
It's a good question. I think that if it happens in that way and that they just outright get rid of it, it's going to happen very, very slowly. I think what already is happening is very interesting. Microsoft is creating experiences in the web versions of these applications that offer up features that just aren't possible in the desktop versions of the applications, or alternatively don't align with the investments they've already made. If you go to Outlook Online right now, there are features that exist in Outlook in the web that don't exist in the desktop application. Mm-hmm. The ability to pin and snooze emails, although I think snooze might have finally made it to the desktop. Yep. And likewise, a lot of the compute experiences, whether it's in PowerPoint with PowerPoint coaching, which is really cool, where you can actually run a demo of the presentation and it'll record you and it'll actually give you tips on whether you're going too fast, too slow, whether there's too much content. That's available through the web experience. And that's not something that has, with the exception of the iPhone and iPad versions of the apps, made it to any of the installed app experiences just yet. So I think that the game they're going to end up playing is probably not total feature parity, but what they'll probably end up doing is creating desirable experiences in the web that make people want to set aside some of those more power user elements, in lieu of something a little bit more intelligent.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And I say intelligent in quotes, not people who use the web are smart.
We do have another question. Again, it is Microsoft related this time. It's a little bit more versus one. Let's take a look. Excel, Power BI versus Tableau. Which one is good for getting data analytics? Which tools are trending in big industries? So maybe Sean, focus on which tools from Ignite are trending, are something that you could see in big industries going forward.
It's a really good question. I'll actually take the question in this whole and drill into what you're talking about here. Because as an organization, so just a little bit of context, I work for a government agency based in the San Francisco Bay Area, and we use Tableau and Power BI. It's a really big question right now of the what to use where when. And I certainly won't kick off this with the caveat of I don't have the answer to that per se, but they both do the same thing, but in different ways. They think about it through different lenses. I think that in the long term, Tableau is absolutely going to have a powerful half-life. Having Salesforce behind it, Salesforce is such a dark horse in the office productivity space. Like I absolutely see a world where we end up using Salesforce's version of the Office suite in 5 years. So you heard it here first. But with respect to Excel and Tableau and that value proposition, I mean, this is the same value proposition we talk about with Teams versus Zoom, Slack versus Teams, that there's going to be value in it just already being there, already being licensed to some degree, and already being deeply embedded in the tools that we depend on every day. So if you're a Microsoft shop, I absolutely see Excel and Power BI being the go-to, if only because it already taps into a lot of these architectural constructs that your organization is invested in. That said, I also see Power BI and Tableau becoming more and more feature parity or feature pair because Microsoft is one, Ben, you said it earlier, $1 trillion company. And they've got the resources and they know this is going to be a big space. There's no universe in which Power BI doesn't get better and better and better and better and better. More importantly, however, there's not a universe in which Power BI doesn't get more accessible and more intuitive and easier to use. Microsoft knows that Excel is the greatest data analysis tool the world has ever seen. And you can disagree. You can say that there are other tools out there. You can say that you can do it with, M or whatever. But the reality is there's never been a more democratizing tool when it comes to the ability to just drop data in and do something powerful with it than what Excel provides. And I think that Microsoft is going to continue to create experiences that build on that. PowerFX, as I mentioned earlier, the new unifying expression language that Microsoft is using for their low-code automation and app development platforms is also coming to Power BI. And that language is based on the Excel formula language. So I would say, I mean, if we're betting on horses, I'm absolutely betting on Excel plus Power BI versus Tableau. Is Tableau prettier and does it feel nicer sometimes? Yes, absolutely. But from a dollars and cents perspective and from a long-term perspective, I think that Power BI and Excel are where you want to put your chips.
Well, yeah, I think that's right on. As someone that teaches Power BI often, I'm super excited to see how that, PowerFX kind of integrates into Power BI. So I'm going to be doing my studying. So thank you for that, Sean. We do have another question.
It's not going to, just one last thing on that one. Don't drop all your knowledge for DAX and M. Those are still staying. Those are going to be there. PowerFX will live concurrently with those languages.
Awesome. So keep all that DAX expressions. Oh yeah. All right. We have a great question here, Ben. You're probably looking at it too. Is there going to be any improvement to the Mac version of Microsoft Office? Because we always talk about PC version getting all these updates, and we know that I always say Mac and Microsoft, they have a very nice relationship. But as you know, it's so different sometimes to be able to go on a MacBook and do something Microsoft. It's just, even like, for example, trying to save a chart as a template. It's just a completely different way. You're making a custom list. It's a completely different way of doing things. So this is a really interesting question. What are your thoughts on that?
So I'm really glad you asked this question because my co-host and I in the podcast that we do, we're both Mac guys. We're both Apple geeks. And we have a slightly different perspective on this, which is that in a lot of different ways, the Mac experience is becoming the favorite experience when it comes to development in the Microsoft world. That's not to say that it has hit feature parity. Joe, you made a great example of there are absolutely still things that you can't do in Mac that you can do in Windows. But that said, Microsoft is less focused on bolstering the Windows versions of these Office apps to the detriment of Mac and more focused on creating the best possible experiences across all platforms. This was a dramatic shift when Satya Nadella took over 8 or 9 years ago at this point, maybe a little less. And yeah, so much in the same way that Microsoft is investing in the web, they're also investing in the Mac. They're also investing in the iOS experience. And what we've seen, what I think is really interesting is that there are a lot of features that make it to Mac first now before they make it to Windows, because the Mac platform, much like the iPhone or the iOS platform and the iPadOS platform, are so much easier to develop for. It's a known quantity that you develop here and it works everywhere, which is not the case for Windows. I mean, it's part of what makes Windows such an ubiquitous thing, is that it can be molded and shaped depending on its use case, but that also makes it really hard to develop for. So yeah, they're going to continue to invest in the Mac space. I think that the Mac versions of Microsoft Office are already the best versions of Office for most people. And of course, the qualifier there being the one or two features that, depending on the app you're using, haven't made it over just yet. But we're also seeing increasingly Microsoft making the effort to move those features over so that it's this single unified experience. But yeah, Team Mac all the way.
Thank you, Sean.
Well, I think we've taken all of your time today, Sean.
Please don't let me go. I have real work to do. This is much more fun. If my boss is watching, I love my job. Jokes aside, I do love my job.
Yeah. Well, Tom, I really want to thank you for coming on and informing us all on how Ignite is affecting us as everyday workers, because you hear about all these conferences and stuff like that, and you hear it's mainly developer stuff like biometrics for Azure and Active Directory and whatnot, and it just kind of flies over our heads, like how this actually affects us. And so bringing it to a more real how it affects us in our day to day and how we'll see these things right now is a great insight for everybody here. I just wanted to ask real quick, do you have any quick shout outs you wanted to do? Because I know you do have your other channel, you do have your Twitter.
You have so much going on.
Yeah, I'm a busy guy. Well, when you trap me in the four walls of my apartment, and the people need to see my face.
Yes,
they need it.
So I would say the first and foremost, if you want kind of just pure unfiltered Sean, follow me on Twitter. For those of you who aren't on Twitter, I'm a huge advocate for it from a career advancement standpoint. I think it's a fantastic networking tool, bar none. So at SBGLR, you can follow me there. You can also check out, if you like, just kind of staying up to speed on what's happening in the Microsoft universe. My co-host Matt Wade and I have a weekly video podcast on YouTube, the Matt and Sean 365 Refresh Show, where we talk about all the latest things that are happening in the Microsoft universe and try to talk about it through the lens of, just like we're talking about here, normal people. How does this affect regular people like you and I? What does it mean for the future? And also taking them to task. Microsoft doesn't always make the best decisions, and making sure that they know that is a big part of our focus as well. You can find us on YouTube. You can just search Jump to 365, Jump TO 365, and you'll find it there. So subscribe.
I love it. It's episode. A great show. I tune in every week. It's for everyone. It really is, and they make it so I guess understanding. Like Sean said, it's really hard with these big tech companies that have their own dialogue, and it's really nice to kind of feel how it's going to affect us. So definitely tune into Sean's Jump to, because I love everything you do over there, Sean, and it's fun. It's fun. So,
and you get to hear so much. This is one of the easiest guys to talk to, honestly. Easiest guy to talk to, I think.
This is why I had to leave Learnit. My head was too big by the time it was time to leave. I almost couldn't get out through the doors. This was a genuine pleasure.
Came down to you.
But no, let's do this again sometime soon. It was really great to catch up with you guys.
No, I'd love
definitely,
yeah. We did have a question on what the topic for next week's show. I think right now we're going to be focusing on Power Query, because I know Joe has done a lot of work on that. But we're always working on getting some guests as well. We have a lot of I have a few more guests from the YouTube world lining up as well. So I don't want to announce the topic quite yet, but we'll tentatively say Power Query for next week.
Power Query.
Ooh, I'll have to tune into that one.
Any last words, Sean?
No, I really appreciate it. You having me on. I enjoyed the conversation. And we didn't talk about Viva, the Microsoft's employee experience platform. For those of you who care about,
I feel it's very brotherish.
I have thoughts. But for those of you who are interested,
another show just on Viva. I didn't want to get into because I had watched a lot of your stuff, and it seemed like you were almost sick of talking about it.
No, not at all. Well, we'll set that aside for a future episode for sure. But for those of you who are interested, Matt and I did a great video on that, just to kind of get you up to speed on what's happening there. But that's going to be fun.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah, check it out. Check it out, Viva. I've heard a lot about it through Sean, so check out his videos. And also check out his Excel videos. I'm sure you all know his voice.
They're here on our channel. They're there.
Search Excel and Learnit. There's so many. I think we crossed like 2 million views across all of them. No?
Yeah. I think we're closing in on 3 million altogether for both your videos combined that we have up there.
Try to keep up, Joe.
I'm trying.
No, you're the best. You guys are the best. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate having you on, Sean. It really means a lot to me to have you here today to talk about all this stuff. It really does.
We'll see you. Yeah, we'll see you next week. We'll let Sean get back to work, and well, me and Ben do our thing, and we'll see you all next week. Thank you so much, Sean. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, everyone. Subscribe, like,
subscribe. Go to Sean's channel, join his Twitter, like and subscribe there. It helps us all tremendously to keep doing and bringing these shows to you as well, and to keep bringing videos on our Learnit channel as well, and for Sean to keep producing channels as well. All right. Have a great weekend or a great week, everybody.